Um, okay, so News About the Candor Channel became News About the Candor Channel slash Furry Fairy Berry Braying Like a Drunken Angel. And somewhere along the line, I was thinking about all the chat made me feel kind of erudite. And I told an anecdote about how a lady named Olga said that I was very kind to the peoples, which is what, like if you're a good trophy wife and who is actually substantive, you're kind to the fans of your spouse, your husband. And
Oh,
so
free
she was
wife.
like, you're very, yeah, he's a big fan of the trophy wives.
Trophy
He
wives.
wants one.
Tight.
Trophy wives are tight. We're in love now with Ryan George. You're not naked from the neck up. You want to get your cheek in
No,
here?
no.
No, you're in one of the videos
Yeah,
I was promoting today. You're so cute. You're all purple and green and blue. Okay, so yeah, like there's just like low bargain basement trophy wife, and all she is like she's got long fingernails and lots of makeup and like a small nose or something, which I certainly don't have. And then it gets higher and higher and higher till it's like the highest is like she actually writes the books and you just put your name on them. Now, that really happened. Sylvia Plath's mother was a writer and her husband was an expert on bees and he couldn't write much or he didn't have time or it just wasn't his thing. So she wrote his books and he put his name on them. But it was his research. But no, like in the movie Blue, Juliette Binoche straight up writes those symphonies and her husband just puts his name on them. And then after Juliette, you know who Juliette Binoche is. You're as much of an art house douche as I am. Own it.
I don't
In the
know
words of Harley
the
Quinn, you gotta
name
own that shit.
of
You know who Juliette
Juliet.
Binoche is? The fucking English Patient, dude.
I never saw
My
that movie.
dude. My dude, you did.
I've
Everybody
not
sat in the
seen
theater
it.
and
No.
suffered through. They fuck in a bathtub. He's like disfigured. What was I thinking downstairs? Something kind of very millennial. I was thinking, yeah, I think and talk now in the words of not my generation, but the generation that's just starting to run the world. And it's probably the same kind of vernacular that their younger siblings and kids, the older millennials, are going to
The
talk.
English Patient is gone.
Yeah, everybody suffered through the English Patient. Rafe Fiennes finally
Everyone who
broke out
knows any
as a sex
mechanical
symbol.
engineering.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know who Ray
You were
Fiennes is.
you were drunk.
Is he hot?
He is in the English Patient. Okay, so
Well, I did see
long
Marry My
story
Wife
short,
at
I'm
the
running
Pay.
4 messenger chat groups, and it's basically like there's the guys who are obsessed with flirting with me, and that's fine because they're my bread and butter, and I like them. They're nice people. There's the guys who are like, well, I've got other things to do, but I could flirt with you. Oh, you're really not? No, I had this lovely conversation with this guy who's left most of the groups, but he was like, fuck, I'm not in the mood for this. Banking, I got no fucking money because the fucking bank took it. And I was like, oh, yeah, me too. I loaned somebody $400 and now I can't pay for a therapy session I got a week before Thanksgiving. And he's like, wow, oh shit. And I'm like, oh snap, we can't pay for shit. And then he was like, it's not like I can get a date, so I guess I'll just talk silly with you. And I was like, you can get a date. I once went on a date with a homeless guy. We didn't hit it off, but I would have. My mom dated a homeless guy for like 8 months of like misery of my life because I had to like sleep on the ground with him and shit. Anyway, and then I came up with what I thought was a brilliant idea. If you have no money, like not destitute, but like very little money, you're seriously broke, buy an apple or the fruit of his or her choice. Invite your sweetheart. Be charming. Be nice because you don't have any money, so you can't. Actually, nice is all the better people like nice. Be charming. Be nice. Offer a piece of fruit and like Owen Wilson in all those movies, so like the Wedding Crashers, just say, I want to go for a walk. And he was like, I fucking hate Owen Wilson. And I was like, that's fine. And then he was like, well, as charmless as he is, that's how charming you are. And I thought he was talking about you. And I was like, who's charmless? And then he was like, Owen Wilson. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I think he's really charming and affable. But I said, but he's affable though. And he was like, what's affable? And I was like, affable. So yeah, I have to basically throw out dirty genitalia jokes on this one channel. And in the Olga channel, it's more medium brow. And then I just had some deep thoughts because we had a big conversation about the Enneagram versus the Great Tradition versus my beloved's favorite spiritual teacher who he doesn't want me to name.
I don't want to even
There's
talk
some
about
A's
that
and
at all.
D's in there. I already did. That's how we started
No,
that
wait,
channel.
it's what?
That's okay. Just stop being so moody. I'm not doing it, am
I'm not. I'm
I? Like,
not
okay.
moody. I'm just telling you. You
Is he moody?
know.
Do I suffer?
Yeah.
I suffer greatly. I won't even tell you. It would your spine would tingle or whatever they say. It would raise the hairs on the back of your neck if you knew how much I suffer. So anyway, so now there's like 4 messenger chat groups. At least 2 of them were made by accident. And when I'm and they wouldn't exist if I didn't throw some stuff in there, if I didn't have stuff to say. People just respond to me, which is kind of humiliating because it makes me feel like I'm so needy that I keep generating conversation with 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or maybe 6 or maybe 8 people, most of whom don't really respond. They just read. And then if I say, hi, so and so, they go, oh, hi. And, but no, it's just enough to make it not abjectly humiliating. It's just enough response. Even though clearly some of them are probably going, oh, that guy's just like, he's like in love with her. That's lame, I mean, anybody could run a chat group if you just find 3 guys who are in love with you. Thank you, honey. And oh my God, I respect all of you so much, and I respect, I just said what I said. Okay, so as I was in the Uber and I was thinking about, yeah, it's kind of hard work to be like, because you're like my girl and you're like 30 years younger than me, and I just am so on your side, and you're my girl and you're having a really hard time, and I respect that, and that's like serious. And oh, you're my guy and you're kind of really competent, and oh, you're my guy and you're having a really hard time. And like this guy the other day, he was like, well, I just lack confidence, but I'm like really confident in the bedroom. And I'm like, so you're not very dominant in the streets, but you're very dominant in the sheets? Well, if I weren't engaged, I'd ask you on a date right now, which I would normally never say, but he seemed like he had good boundaries. So I said that. But then part of my psyche is going, yeah, you can't make guesses like that. Pardon me, I've been in a lot of pain all day, so dopamine. The faint blue light of the intellect is what Eric Berne called the pleasure of thinking. He seriously underestimated the pleasure of thinking for some guy who did it all day long. So I'm sitting in the Uber and I'm thinking about the kind of social acumen that it takes to do this, which I barely have, but I'm like learning as I go. I'm like my stepdaughter used to throw herself into careers that she wasn't ready for. She threw herself into a career as a computer programmer. She had no training, no education. She was working with people who had degrees, and she just like a little, vermin, like a squirrel. She just.
Worcestershire sauce.
I love Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah.
If I'm in a place and they serve oysters with like jalapeno ganache and no Worcestershire sauce, like they tend to do at our place, A16, if they're still willing to serve us now that we went there with Mr. J, Mr. JU, because he was like, I don't want to pay for anything, and I want some tomato sauce on the side. Pizzas doesn't have tomato sauce anymore, 50% of them. That's just what we do. Anyway, okay, so I was thinking about that, what that's like being like a woman who's navigating all these different personalities who have to be integrated into a conversation. And I thought, oh, well, that's what Anna Karenina did when she's living with Vronsky, who no is not a bureaucrat, he's a soldier, an count, in Anna Karenina in that phase of the book.
Count.
Yeah, he's a count. Count Vronsky.
We can talk about whether or not a count is a bureaucrat or not.
He is not a bureaucrat in any way, shape, or form. He's a soldier. That's what he does. He soldiers.
Yeah.
But then when he runs off with Anna, he gives up his occupation altogether, and he has to survive. So he tells his older brother, hey, you know how I gave you all my money? You and your wife and kids? I need some of my money back. And they were like, well, Vronsky, no, they both have the same name, her 2 men. What is it? Karenin and Vronsky. They have the same first name. It's not Levin. That's the co-protagonist. It's not Nicola. It's not Nikolai. Alexei. Alexei Karenin and
Oh, we're
Alexei
talking about
Vronsky.
Anna Karenina.
Yeah, we were talking about
Can
Anna
you start
Karenina.
over so I can,
No.
please?
So her husband is
How
Alexei
am I supposed
Karenin.
to follow
Use your
it?
associative cortex. Her husband, that's what I'm using, is Alexei Karenin, and he is a bureaucrat and about 20 years older than her. Here's the thing. When you marry a man who's 20 or 30 years older than you and wanted to marry you, that's one kind of experience. He got pressured into marrying her. He flirted with her a little too long, and it was perceived as courtship. He was probably a little too socially inept to know that that's what he was doing. And her aunt, I don't know whatever happened to Anne. This would be a great essay title. Who is Anna Karenina's mother? Why does Princess Anna not have a mother? Now her brother Stevia, what's his last name? Stevia. I don't know, but he's a prince, and that means that she was born a princess. Almost everybody in that book is a prince or a princess, but not Karenin. What? It's not Brett.
Brent.
Brent? No.
Oh.
No, what's Stevia's last name?
Oh, Stevia is his
First name. Yeah.
Oh.
Stevia. What's his last name? His wife's name is Dolly. I don't know.
Is it Russian?
It's very Russian. They're all very Russian. He's a descendant of one of the great Russian families.
So the last name is
He's a descendant of a famous Russian man. He's sitting in a waiting room and he's like, I'm a descendant of Prince blah blah blah. I can't believe I'm waiting. He's mad that he's waiting for a Jewish lawyer to attend to him when he's a descendant of Baryshnikov or whatever. That's not. He's a descendant of like cul-de-sac. Okay, so I was thinking about how once. This is a 20-minute video. This is like monetizable. Get your shit together. Put on a shirt.
Yeah, well, who's gonna,
Nobody. I know. I'm just kidding.
Watch this video.
Thank you.
No.
You were the one that I suggested I care about money. You know me, I'm congenitally incapable of caring about money until it comes down to survival time. So anyway, so I was thinking about how once she runs away with Count Vronsky and gives up her legitimate life as a wife of a high-level bureaucrat and loses her son in the process, she presides over the table, and there's all these people who are economically dependent on Vronsky and therefore tolerate the fact that he's with a fallen woman, Anna, who's only a fallen. I mean, it's terribly unfair and I'm sorry, sexist, because he seduced her, he chased her down, and she was actually a very good and happy wife. She was completely.
Is that the press money?
Yeah, she was completely. See, in my neighborhood, this is why it was so heavy to carry the kind of food I bring, because in my neighborhood, this is how they give you pudding in a big old jar. So she was totally like comfortable with the life of a younger wife. She had her son. She wouldn't buy new dresses. She would take her dresses and redo them. She was considered a grande dame, even with her renovated dresses of St. Petersburg society. She preferred the religious types to hang out in those social circles to the demimonde, or no, they're not demimundians. They're part of the court. She wouldn't hang out with the princes and princesses and the countesses, even though she was a princess. She would hang out with the obsessively religious people who are, again, older than her. Anyway, so she ends up presiding over Vronsky's table. And the visitor notices that Vronsky really runs everything in terms of the cook, the staff. He runs the household. And he makes that judgment, or she, I think it's Dolly, I think it's Stevia's wife, Dolly, makes that judgment. I think she refers to him, in the beginning, Anna has to rescue Dolly from seeking a divorce, which would have probably been the best thing for Dolly. And she refers to her as there's some French word for sister-in-law, like my grand sister or something like that. Anyway, is a little bit headstrong. She dismisses the whole thing after this heartfelt talk like Captain Kirk with Dolly. If I were you, I would forgive as if it had never happened. That didn't really work so well because Stevia kept on. He didn't give up his governess mistress. He just, got her out of the house. And he had assumed that his wife knew he was having sex with other women because he was like, well, you're all haggard from having 5 of my kids. What did you expect? I'm gorgeous and you're not. Anyway, so Anna runs the conversation at the table, and it makes sense that Dolly wouldn't value that because Dolly is probably a very practical woman and she probably runs the house and the kitchen. But those wives who run the house and the kitchen probably can't do what Anna does, which is even if it's just a bunch of sort of toadies who are economically dependent on Vronsky, you have to try to find a way to turn that into a pleasant conversation every evening, and that's got to be hard. And she's able to ask everybody the right questions. And there's one scene where she's a little crude about it, but she probably gets tired of the job after some time. She's able, and when the co-protagonist of the novel, the stand-in for Count Tolstoy himself, Lev Tolstoy, when Konstantin Levin arrives, he is one of the young men that she completely charms with her intellect and her soulfulness. So that by morning they're going, wait, did I just spend the evening deep in conversation with a fallen woman? How can I explain this to my wife? This is shameful. But at the time, they're completely charmed by her. Completely charmed. So I was thinking what a skill that is. And it's a very traditionally female skill. And you can be like Dolly and you can go, oh, well, Vronsky really runs the house. But Anna runs the house on a different level, you know?
Sure.
And then I was thinking, she makes their lives legitimate by making it so that if you come there, you are so charmed by her that you think that this is a legitimate way to be, even if in the morning it's like a hangover and you think, no, 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 only, marriage in the church of the Russian Orthodox Church under the auspices of God can work, which is clearly what Tolstoy couldn't wrap his head around. He told his wife he was going to create a novel that would redeem the fallen woman and show that it wasn't her fault, and then he had to punish her. He couldn't wrap his head around it, even though in the end he kind of merged with Anna, is what the new translator, Richard Prévert, who he and his wife have an amazingly innovative form of translating, but it's actually what I was going to do before Claude offered to leave me half of the house. I was going to be either do relaxation video tapes back before there were videos or YouTube, or a really innovative form of translating out of Spanish novels, which you wouldn't have to be fluently in Spanish to do because you would just be completely literal. That's what they do. She speaks Russian and she just makes a completely literal translation and then into English, and then he reads it and it's completely axiomatic, idiomatic, and he makes it idiomatic. And now he's learning to speak Russian, so he can do the whole deal. And he wrote this beautiful essay at the beginning of Anna Karenina. Their translation is the bomb. It just knocks that other Victorian thing out of the water. Okay, so I was thinking about how what she does makes their lives legitimate, almost. But she can't make their lives legitimate because Russian society will never accept them. There's this one evening of if she had just stayed home and let him be out, run around with some princess socializing and not be jealous and stayed home, everything would have been okay. But she was too agitated. She couldn't handle it. It was too upsetting knowing he was free to run around with a princess in public and she has to stay home. She can never show her face in polite society anymore. So she went out into polite society, and at that point she became not a genteel fallen woman, but a scandalously fallen woman. And so, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers.
Anna Karenina spoiled.
No, so Anna has to end up under the train. Anna has to jump under the train. Because she's created a life for herself with Vronsky, where, yes, he admired her beauty, but he had admired it so many times. And he was so tired of her jealousy, and it was so hard knowing that she could never leave the house, and he could leave the house anytime he wanted. And that was all because he pursued her so hotly until he got her into bed. And Tolstoy describes it as like comforting her afterwards, after her committing the sin of adultery, was like hiding the body of the person you just murdered, even though they were all so madly in love with each other. She didn't want to admit that. He said something like, for this happiness, there's nothing I wouldn't do. And she said, happiness? What happiness? But deep inside, in a way that she didn't want to admit, she was profoundly happy. There's an amazing moment where she tells Vronsky that she's pregnant he just visits whenever he wants, and the whole household is like, who is this dude who visits every day? And her son's like, Mommy, who's Count Vronsky? I don't quite get it, but he doesn't say it out loud. And she tells him she's pregnant, and he's like, oh, okay, well, we've never considered our relations a game because it's starting to get really serious. And his mother's like, Why didn't you just go to bed with a beautiful grande dame? Why are you all serious? This is pathetic. Anyway, and he's like, okay, we'll work this out. And then he walks away and then he comes back and he grabs her wrists and he says, when? And she says, tonight. That's how sensual Tolstoy's writing is. Like if you, Francine Prose compares Tolstoy's writing to that lady you like, and so do I kind of, Sense and Sensibility lady. You know who that is.
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen. Jane Austen describes a ball and it's all up in the head. Tolstoy describes a ball and it's all in the heart and the body. It's all about Anna mirroring Vronsky and Vronsky mirroring Anna. And in that moment, he seduces her. The first time she met him, she threw him a lively ball of coquetry, which he caught in midair. But it was nothing to her. Coquetry.
Hey, I got a question.
Yeah?
I don't think you can see this one coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you with that smile on your face?
No. I'm wondering what you're going to do to me on camera.
Ballroom. Okay, we had Jane Austen's ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had.
Well, these are generally private homes, but okay.
What was the other one?
Tolstoy, who we've been talking about this whole time.
Ballroom.
Private home again, yes.
Okay.
Big as a ballroom. Rich
How
people.
about Disney's ballroom?
I don't seriously don't give a shit.
No,
Thank you for making me remember. I know that some of you love like the animated Beauty and the Beast, just not into it.
Hold on.
I'm not into the new. I'm even less into the new. Well, I can look
I'm
at the
thinking
new the live action Beauty and the Beast is better to look at, but it's stupid. Yeah.
Cinderella.
Oh, I love Cinderella. I am Cinderella. See all these cinders all over?
Okay, now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she goes to the ball.
She goes to
That's
that ball.
that's the palace. That's the prince's home.
That's the prince's home.
Yep.
And it also the ballroom.
There's my creme brulee. Hey, you just made my glasses fall off my hands.
I think
Mm-hmm.
this is from a conversation when I was a child.
Aw.
So
You were a
this
child.
might not be accurate.
Yeah.
Somebody fact check me on this.
Pineapple lemonade. Yes, I'm ready to fact check
But
you.
Walt Disney
This phone is gonna die.
died
In a
right
ballroom?
before the production of that ballroom scene.
In Cinderella?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. He sounds like a trippy guy. Ryan Gosling kind of idolizes him. Yeah. He was a Musketeer, as was Britney Spears. They were Musketeers together. Those are facts.